As many of you likely know if you've been watching my channel for a while, I'm a voice actor. It was what I wanted to be as a kid, it was why I went to film school, and it's why I spent 2 years straight using silly little voices on this channel and on my Twitch, among other reasons. I did some voice work here and there as a younger adult, and this past year I've been inspired to get out there and apply for more roles in indie projects, in part thanks to the support that people have given me on this channel. Now I've been paid to be in animations, shorts, and even a game that's allegedly slated for release sometime in the next year. With that being the case, and with getting more and more embroiled in the world of voice actor drama since Twitter will not stop showing me these terrible callouts ever since I started looking for open auditions, there is one thing that started to bother me more and more. With the Super Mario movie losing out to The Last of Us at the Game Awards for Best Adaptation, and the discussion around the film's story and voice cast being reignited, I can see much more openly that it bothers a lot of other professional voice actors too. Casting celebrities for voice acting roles when they don't have any expertise just for their celebrity status is, well, poor form, and more often than not leads to either lackluster or unfulfilling performances. With the joke being that a certain crisp rat allegedly saw a producer hit a kid with their car to get so many of these leading roles, one really has to wonder, why are celebrity voice casts such a huge thing in the English-speaking film sphere? And why are they almost always mediocre at best? Hey, hiya hoya out there to all my big brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, and of course mommies, daddies, siblings, and guardians. It's me, your bite-sized baddie and favorite little brother Mark. Before we get too far into it, I'd like to shout out the partner of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes and members. Many use it as a place to learn new life skills, from cooking to illustration to learning about stocks. There's a nearly endless supply of knowledge to help you improve in whatever field you're interested in. Skillshare classes are taught by industry professionals and encouraged by a vibrant community of avid learners just like you. With the hands-on learning approach provided by Skillshare classes, you'll be so immersed working alongside your teacher with new assignments and techniques. I've been really interested in Celine D's class, Color Mixing in Procreate, how to pick colors for beginners. Even though I use Fire Alpaca, it's still got the basics of what I'm trying to learn. If you're also interested in learning more about colors or anything else under the sun, go to my link in the description and use the code on screen for 30% off your annual subscription. Thanks so much for listening, and without further ado, let's get into it. We see this phenomenon of celebrity voice casting quite a lot in dubbed Ghibli films, with a Jonas brother, a Cyrus daughter, and a Batman taking lead roles in the past. None of these were exactly bad voice work per se, and it is a little unfair to speculate about who could have done quote-unquote better. One of the best film animation performances this past year was, in my opinion, delivered by Robert Pattinson in The Boy and the Heron. So it's definitely not a case of celebrity voice actor equals bad. That man committed to the bit, and I think that gets you 9/10 of the way to an amazing delivery. But it does cause one to wonder how the casting for these films happens. We've seen time and time again where big-name actors are hired for a role, sometimes to a movie's benefit, but often to its detriment, or at best in a way that doesn't affect the film whatsoever. I don't think anyone was looking at Charlize Theron's Morticia in the Addams Family and saying, "Wow, that was the best." I don't think anyone could have done better. The obvious answer is that studios want them there for the celebrity name power. It's marketing and wanting to make money over wanting to produce an actually valuable piece of art. Now, Mark, you might be saying, of course studios need to make money. How else will they make more films? And to that, I say, you're correct, to an extent. However, it seems that Hollywood execs are not trying to market and make money to be able to create films, but are instead just making these celebrity cast nightmare audios to make money. It seems to harken back to the fact that animation is not respected as a medium that can stand on its own. It's for kids, with no intellectual value, unless it's some avant-garde, overt, artistic statement like the film Loving Vincent. Studio runners seem to think that if you want a mainstream audience to even look at your animated feature, you have to shoehorn in all the A, B, and C-listers you can to grasp at as many brand recognition straws. They bank on people going to see it just because an actor they like is in it, while also being diminished to the nothing opinion many adults and Hollywood bigwigs appear to have of animation as a form of media. As a matter of fact, it's kind of been devalued as a medium ever since said Hollywood bigwigs were first threatened by it with the theatrical performance of Beauty and the Beast. Not only was the film the first feature-length animation to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars in 1992, it actually won the Oscar for Best Song and was nominated for Best Sound. 3 nominations and 1 win is nothing to sneeze at. And it seems like Hollywood execs also took notice, because in 2002, the Academy created the Animated Feature category, which all animated films over 40 minutes in length were then shoehorned into forever. Now, it could be argued that this is because Disney had such a chokehold on the animation industry before this time, but I'd ask you to put a pin in that for later. This ignores the fact that animated is not a genre the same as romance, action, or thriller, but instead a form through which to tell the story. While we will be getting into how Disney is the root of all evil yet again and led us to this state of celebrity voice acting a bit later in the video, I'd like to point out how much of a tragedy this really is. Now a self-fulfilling prophecy has been created with Western animation being a quote-unquote lesser class of cinema that deserves less attention to detail and love when it comes to everything other than the visuals and whatever new hyper-realistic texture mapping tech they can tout in interviews. It seems not intended to even have the oniric quality of other films, but rather to just be there, designed as fodder for children. And that's how these A-list actors tend to treat their roles in animated films a great deal of the time. There is very little immersion to have in a story when Mario is basically turning to the camera to say, "Hey, what's up? I'm voiced by the guy who plays Star-Lord." It's not meant to transport you to another world within the story or immerse you. It's just meant to placate. The thought process seems to come down to, we'll have this actor that the parents recognize as the lead, so they'll feel good about watching this children's movie, derogatory. And children are too freaking brain dead to be able to recognize a good performance from an absolute dookie one. Because golly gee willikers, surely if the parents see an actor they like, they'll be willing to trudge along to theaters for whatever Pinocchio or Skechers Twinkle Toes the movie their kids want to see 5 times in a row. All of that to say, it's not as though you can't be a voice actor if you were a screen actor, or that films with star-studded casts are inherently inferior. Like, have you seen Trolls 3? I went on an hour-long rant about this to my family on Christmas Eve, but if Wish made me feel like animated cinema was dead, and that fucking rat Bob Iger killed it, then the 3 in Trolls is how many days it took to resurrect the medium in the style of Easter morning. Yes, that's a blasphemous exaggeration, and hyping up a silly movie made to sell toys is ultimately going to lead to disappointment. Man, I'm so sad about how mid and obviously money-hungry Wish was when it could have been so great without corporate meddling, and Trolls 3 somehow felt like it had way more heart and care put into the characters, story, voice acting, as well as the pretty visuals. Allow me to harken back to my earlier statement about how Disney is the root of all evil before I continue. The state of big animated film VA casting is, as a keen listener may have guessed, kind of the rat's fault. Back in the year 1991, a film titled Aladdin was released, and this film is the ancestor of all horrible celebrity castings. Not to say that its casting was bad, however, the titular character Aladdin was voiced by Scott Wigner, but most beloved, most eye-catching, and most responsible for the film's success was Genie, Robin Williams. To quote Scott Meslow's 2011 article in The Atlantic, in many ways it was the perfect pairing of actor and character, and Williams' manic energy made for an undeniably great genie. But the casting decision came with a catch. It's also impossible to separate the genie as a character from the public persona of Robin Williams. Aladdin's genie constantly breaks the fourth wall, winking at the audience and doing impressions from Arnold Schwarzenegger to Jack Nicholson that are just a little anachronistic for the film's ancient Arabian time period. Though the film was named after Aladdin, Williams' genie is the character audiences responded to, and more importantly to Disney, its most marketable character by far. The celebrification of voice work can be traced through the films Disney released in the years after Aladdin, from The Lion King with Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Whoopi Goldberg, James Earl Jones, to Home on the Range with Roseanne Barr, Dame Judi Dench, etc. But the trend has been most prevalent in the computer-animated films that have dominated family-friendly cinema since Pixar released Toy Story in 1995. When profits skyrocketed from the stunning performances given by Williams and even Alan in Toy Story, highlighted by expressive character animation, excellent direction, and heartfelt scores. Who would pass up lightning in a bottle? Who would not try to repeat great success? Now, over 30 years later, after the blossoming success of, hey, what if we had accomplished film actors and comedians act in our movies? We have a horse so dead and beaten, there's barely dust in a memory remaining. As an aside, Robin Williams' performance in Aladdin has a sordid history of its own embroiled in greed from the mouse. Initially, Williams didn't even want to take on the role and needed a great deal of cajoling, only taking it on after a test animation of Genie was done using one of his comedy routines to show him how perfect he was for the role. The story goes that he accepted only under the condition that his voice would not be used for merchandising, a promise that was made to him but ultimately broken by Disney after the film's success. This is why the role of Genie was taken on by Dan Castellaneta in the film's sequel Return of Jafar and the animated series. To quote a 1993 LA Times article, when interviewed, Williams said, "We had a deal. The one thing I said was, I will do the voice. I'm doing it basically because I want to be part of this animation tradition. I want something for my children. One deal is, I just don't want to sell anything. As in Burger King. As in toys. As in stuff." Williams said Disney executives agreed to honor his wishes. Quote, "Then, all of a sudden, they released an advertisement. One part was the movie, the second part was where they used the movie to sell stuff. Not only did they use my voice, they took a character I did and overdubbed it to sell stuff. That was the one thing I said. I don't do that. That was the one thing where they crossed the line." Only after the contract disputes were settled and an apology was issued to Williams did he return for the property's final installment, Aladdin and the King of Thieves. Perhaps this was only a warning shot depicting the corporate greed that was to come later. Man, we could have had a Born Sexy Yesterday plot centering around a literal star boy. I hate it here. Screen acting is about being subtle and showing your character as an individual person through their mannerisms and their expressions on your face. Voice acting is doing that, but entirely through your voice, which makes everything a bit extra in a way screen actors would cringe over. One is a lot more understated by necessity, and one tends to be super expressive and flamboyant. It works to Howl Pendragon's benefit, as he is soft-spoken and mysterious when you're not seeing his slime booty. That same delivery may fall a bit flat in more exaggerated scenes. Christian Bale did his best at delivering those lines, and I will fight for him till the end of time, however. Honestly, theater or musical genres and voice acting are leagues closer together than voice acting and screen acting. Just like how your motions have to be over-exaggerated and voice has to carry enough weight to reach the back of a theater, your voice alone is the only way for you to reach the audience as a voice actor. I believe most people have the capacity to become voice actors, but you have to have a certain personality and a willingness to commit to the bit for your performance to shine through. Our Chris Pratt is, well, personally repugnant life choices aside, his vocal performances feel more than a bit lacking in the heart department. By that, I mean a lot of his roles thus far can be summed up as just different seasonings on the rat meat. You can tell that Star-Lord is just Chris Pratt in space, and his role in Parks and Rec is him in the skin of a himbo. Compare those deliveries to, say, Kristen Stewart. She has the range, and aside from residual Twilight hate, many tend not to even recognize her as Kristen Stewart in different roles. Or even return to our favorite Genie, Robin Williams, whom I miss so much. Genie, though the same type of loving friend and confidant, is an entirely different person from Sean Maguire in Good Will Hunting, who is entirely different from Ramon in Happy Feet. Even if he plays the same genre of character, he's always a different person in his roles. Sure, the Mario movie wound up being passable by many fans' opinion, but if anything, that was due to Jack Black putting his whole Jablinskoosie into that Bowser role. And even Keegan-Michael Key had an interesting enough take on Toad and the effort to do a character voice. It's charmingly him while still being shrill enough to recognize as Toad. In the end, the quality of the film wasn't really what the studio was banking on here. Sure, it's a plus, but it was all the star power. Between the video game giant Mario himself and the other actor-filled cast that knew they were guaranteed for some sort of box office success. The Hollywood idea of star power is a tricky business. Take the film series Sing, for example. Ellis Mark in his video on the brand pointed out, rightly in my opinion, that the marketing was more on who played the characters in the story than the characters or the story itself. And you can see it exemplified well in every poster. You don't know anything about the film or what to expect from this, just that what's-his-fuck plays this animal. Whether you believe it's because they found this the best way to market, or because they knew their movie didn't really need substance to sell, or rather that the target demographic didn't need to be aware of any substance for it to sell, is just disheartening. That's not to say that the Sing movies are bad, or that they're masterpieces. It's to model the fact that voice acting in American animated film is, well, by and large, whack. Voice acting is an art form all on its own, yet it's only treated as such in certain industries. VAs who've spent their lives honing their craft are pushed aside when it comes to big roles and opportunities in favor of Chris doing his best Rocket Raccoon impression.
Alright.
Worst is that this doesn't seem to be a global phenomenon in the least. I've continued to state that this is an American and Western film acting issue after all. Look at the French Mario trailer, or at least this segment of it. Hopefully that doesn't get me copyright stricken, but that sounds like Mario, and I personally love it. We have to consider the cultural aspect of this. You always hear about French art films, so maybe they just do correctly treat all film as an equal art form. I know that there are some dubious voices in film globally, but it looks like that's at least come by naturally with poor quality casting instead of forcing famous people down our throats. Maybe it's because of this stigma and the fact that it's been asserted time and time again that pro voice actors are easily pushed aside in favor of quote-unquote real talent, that the stars of the Jujutsu Kaisen movie, which grossed $31 million in the American box office alone, were allegedly paid flat fees of $300 for the whole movie. And that's just for the highest priority roles. For anyone who might not understand, it's not unusual for an established voice actor to have an hourly rate that's in the hundreds on its own, being that certain recording styles mean you're punching out line after line after line all at once. Looking at the $300 price tag, that would mean they worked collectively one day if this was a $12 minimum wage. That's not something you can live off of in this horrible economy. No residuals, no nothing. It's nigh evil. But a lot of voice actors put up with it because we love our craft and ultimately we'll have to get a side hustle to make ends meet. Hell, I myself have been told to raise my voice commission prices by industry professionals multiple times, and the only reason I haven't is because I just don't feel like I'm ready to count myself as a quote-unquote professional, even though I'm an award-winning voice actor, technically. In the end, we'll probably never see the end of celebrities and voice acting roles for anything short of a huge box office bust. And it's not something I necessarily want to get rid of altogether in the first place. As stated earlier, there are so many examples of celebrities actually excited to be in their animated roles, who actually try for a good end result. Ultimately, all I can hope for is that the actors who are placed in these roles treat the artwork with the respect it deserves. And at least try to put more than a sliver of effort into doing a good character voice. If you made it this far, way to go! How do you feel about Hollywood actors taking on voice acting work? Do you think Mr. Crispy Rat did a good job as Mario? What about his role in the Lego Movie? Tell me down below. The video subject was requested multiple times between Discord and Patreon, so I'm glad to have finally finished it. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe, it really helps out the channel, and at our next goal of 3K subscribers, I'll host an art giveaway. Thank you, as always, to my wonderful Patreon supporters. At our brother, sibling, sister tier, we have Veery, Miss Mercuriel, Minnow, Ash Valentine, and Echo Foxtrot. At our mommies, daddies, and guardians tier, we have Mary and Kiryu Makoto. And at our gods, goddesses, and deities tier, we have gods and punks. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely scrabdangulous day. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Bye-bye.